So I want to talk about the Police Crime Commissioner, especially for Greater Manchester. I don't know where you two gentlemen live, but do you know who your Police Crime Commissioner is?
Not a clue then. The elements on me.
No. That's part of the problem. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. So the positions were created a decade ago, 2012, across the country. So every area now, every police force on top of it has a Police Crime Commissioner.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for the police, who can be held publicly accountable. Before that, there would be a group of people called the Police Authority, which were made up by local politicians, some community groups, some other people, and you never knew who that group of 12 people were. Now we have one person.
Is this person a genuinely powerful individual who can get stuff done?
No.
Right.
No.
So it's a nice person to execute when something goes wrong.
It's
politically speaking, YouTube.
No, because they then say, I have no power.
Right, perfect.
So
then no one's at fault. We can all move on. That's a great
it's one of those non-roles that it shouldn't be, because I was a big supporter of it when this came out a decade ago.
I really liked the idea when I first heard it, and what I was envisaging in my mind is, the guy for, hopefully the guy for Wessex would come along and say, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build 10 new prisons.
Yep.
And anyone who burgles, rather than letting them out on probation immediately, or not sending them to prison, are just going to put them in jail for 20 years. And I was like, yes, I like that idea.
Yep.
And then nothing happened.
Well, nothing can happen because the Police Crime Commissioner can't build prisons, because that's a Home Office decision.
Right.
Can't change the law and make new laws up, and can't even interfere with the directions you give to judges. So none of that comes under their remit whatsoever.
So nothing like the American system.
No. It's basically about the police force.
Right.
So that's all they have an influence in. So they can write policy and strategy for the police force. They can't interfere on particular cases. They can't say to the chief constable, right, those people who burgled houses, no. You can't start talking about individual cases. That's not your remit. You only can write policies and strategies.
But they're pointless.
Not necessarily, because through those policies and strategies, you can then change the police force to start doing work in other areas and prioritize certain things. But what's happened is it's become a political position.
Can you deprioritize stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you could say to your police force, I'm going to write a strategy. My strategy is 2 lines. Stop doing the trans shit or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not stop doing it. Place it lower down the priority, because again, you can't undo laws. So what you can say to your police is, we have no officers sat at a desk working on tweets. That doesn't come under our strategy at all. So therefore, chief constables will go, right, that goes, because I need those resources, because I'm going to be judged on something else.
Okay.
So that's what they were meant to do. But it became a political role where the people who were the police crime commissioners went, do you know what? This is a stepping stone to something better. I bet not cause any waves. I don't want to be sued by Stonewall. I don't want government criticizing me in Parliament, because I want to be an MP one day. I want to be the chief exec of some bank when I retire.
So it's a holding role for people who want to start climbing the greasy pole at West.
Exactly. And the best example I can give you would be Boris Johnson. He used the mayor to become PM, and it worked.
Yep.
And it worked. So the mayor of Greater Manchester, when it all started a decade ago, was this gentleman, Tony Lloyd. So Tony Lloyd is now an MP in Rochdale. So he did okay. So that's Tony Lloyd. So has crime reduced in Greater Manchester over the last decade since we've had this role? So I spent a few days over the weekend looking at some of the stories on the front page of the Manchester Evening News. And the Manchester Evening News covers the whole of Greater Manchester. So I'll just read some of the headlines and then we'll look at some of the stories. 2 days ago, there was a bloodbath outside Tesco's. Horror as desperate stabbing victim staggers into a shop. He was at a party next door, a house party, gets stabbed. We had to get the air ambulance to land on the street to take him to hospital. He nearly died. House party, stabbing. If we can have the next link. This is an axeman barges into someone's house, ties up the owner and robs them. We have axemen now in Greater Manchester knocking on your door and robbing you.
Sorry to laugh, but that's like something out of Rome Total War.
No,
the Axeman unit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we've not got serious career criminals who'll stake out a place and come in with guns and things like that. No. Yeah. You just grab an axe now out your shed and you go around robbing people in your neighbourhood. Does anything like this happen where you live?
No.
Yeah. Well, we had,
Oh, yeah, but you live in Swindon.
Okay.
Right. Couple more headlines. Devastated family of man killed in another axe attack by his cousin. That's in Trafford. Another one. You can't hurt me now. Woman tells the court over a rapist who committed 2 rapes within 2 weeks. That was Levenshulme in Manchester, next to where I grew up. I have family in Levenshulme. I used to walk to the picture house in Levenshulme and go skating there next door to the picture house.
But I mean, Manchester has changed a lot, hasn't it? I mean,
It really, really
was
has.
that TV series? Because there was that TV series where a policeman goes back in time. And
Yes.
Was that Manchester?
Life on Mars.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was.
Because the old Manchester then, it looked quite good, and I think you were supposed to get the impression that it was awful back then and the police were bad, but actually I got the impression that I bloody loved that. What I saw.
It's good and bad. So I mean, let's go back to the 60s and 70s. Police were more corrupt than they are now.
Yes.
If they thought you'd done something wrong, good chance you get fitted up, even if you was innocent. And there's a good chance you'd be taken around the back of the station and you'd get 10 bells kicked out of you. Those things shouldn't have happened then, shouldn't happen now.
Right.
But on the flip side, we had dedicated officers who made sure on their beat criminals were terrified.
Well, you had a community,
Yeah.
and you had police who were of that community and understood the community, and the community thing works, because the community has changed to such an extent that it has lost that cohesion.
It has, partly due to immigration, but also partly down to our individual sense as well. We're all individually focused now. Hardly anyone now cares about families breaking down. No one cares about family. No one cares about community. It's all about me and mine. So why would I report these people to the police? I've had some intelligence. That might come back on me. But you know what? On the grand scheme of things, I don't care about the community. I only care about me. That's a big part of it as well. If we can have the next link. It's not always just serious violence as well. This was a fight breaking out at a Deacon Blue concert in the middle of Manchester City Centre. Deacon Blue, this middle-class group from the 90s, and there's violence at concerts with Deacon Blue. That's how far we're falling. Across the country, but especially in Greater Manchester, violence is getting to almost epidemic levels now. And like I say, I didn't go hunting for these stories. These are all on the front page of the online Manchester Evening News.
I can believe it.
Yeah. So, as we said before, I fully supported the police crime committees when they first came out. I thought, we can finally have someone to hold accountable. Because at that time, the police are doing a poor service in your area. Who do you blame? Well, you can blame the police, but you have no influence over the police. They're run by the chief constable. Well, there's nothing you can do to the chief constable. Complain to your local councillors. They say, I'm a councillor, there's nothing to do with me, the police. That covers the whole of the region. Oh, complain to your MP. Well, your police force is over several areas and they're run by a chief constable and I'm not. So who do you complain to? That's why it was created. So you could say, Joe Bloggs is the police crime commissioner of my police force. I think my police force is rubbish. I'm going to hold you accountable and I'm going to make sure you're not elected in the next election unless you change. Unless you do the things I want. And maybe he doesn't do the things you want because he's doing what the most people want. That's fine. That's
do you know what the
democracy.
turnouts for these elections are? I imagine unless it's on the same day as a Westminster election, it's probably next to nothing.
I would say it's about a third. You get about a third turnout. At the mayor election, PCC elections, a third turnout.
Right. Do you guys remember when there was the first election of police and crime commissioners? I remember the BBC coverage. There was one place in Wales where 0 human beings had voted.
Yeah.
So then they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Presumably the candidates didn't even vote for themselves, so I don't know what.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to what I've been saying for decades. We're partly to blame, our apathy of not engaging in the system and then complaining about the system. Then we had a little bit of attacking democracy here because we had a police crime commissioner, Tony Lloyd. And then the government said, you're going to have a mayor of Greater Manchester. And that mayor is also going to be the police crime commissioner as well. We're going to hold a mayor election in 3 years' time. But before we hold the election for mayor, we're going to give the job to Tony Lloyd because he's been elected as the PCC. Yeah, he was, but he wasn't elected as mayor. So they gave him the job of mayor without an election. They just gave it to him. Now that doesn't fit right with me at all. And then we had an election in 2017, and Andy Burnham then stood for Labour, and Andy Burnham won, and he's won the next election as well. So that's the history to that. If we look at the government website, police crime commissioners, if we scroll down, if we can scroll down to where it says deputy, that's it, deputy mayor bit there. So deputy mayors for policing and crime. So Greater Manchester, the mayor holds the responsibilities of the PCC. So the mayor is the police crime commissioner, but the mayors don't want to be the PCC, so they give the job to a deputy mayor. They just create a job at 80 grand a year and say, here you go, pal, you can be the police crime commissioner with no election. I'm giving you the job. So the democracy of the PPC to make sure someone's held accountable is just cleared away. And then when people complain about the police, Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, goes, I gave that to my deputy. You need to ask those questions of my deputy.
Well, I don't think you even say that. He'll probably just say, well, we have a police and crime commissioner and just obfuscate the whole...
And that's what they do. That's what they do. So we're back in Greater Manchester. We're back to where we started. We don't know who to hold accountable for policing in Greater Manchester. Andy Burnham doesn't want the job. He's made it perfectly clear. If we can have the next link. And we know Andy Burnham doesn't care because he spends all this time on transport. So he's now created a new bus network in Greater Manchester. And I'm not saying public transport isn't important. I'm sure it is. But let me ask you two a question. What's more important, catching a bus on time or having an axeman at your front door trying to rob you?
Yeah, I think...
I know. I set that question up a little bit. That wasn't really a fair question.
No, it's almost like I can vote for Axemen. Like,
yeah. But it makes my point.
Yes.
The mayor should be concentrating on the most important stuff for the people in the area. He should assign transport to his deputy, and he should be looking after crime. That would be a better way around. Look at the next link. And if you scroll up a little bit, this is how Andy Burnham portrays himself in Greater Manchester. He's a Christ-like figure now because he's got us buses. We didn't have buses in the north before. We were using horse and carts, but...
Well, presumably he thinks he can win more votes from people who use buses than he loses votes from people who occasionally have an axeman show up at their front door.
Andy Burnham's not a stupid man by any stretch of the imagination. But that must be his gamble. He must be thinking this.
Yes.
But I'm running against him, and I'm going to make sure it isn't. I want to make sure people are voting on crime because that's the most important bang. And if you have the next link, he also talks about transport that's got nothing to do with him. So when we're looking at the trains,
not his remit.
Not his remit.
Yeah.
You know, he can have a say into it because he's the mayor of Greater Manchester. Trains go through Greater Manchester, but he's constantly talking about things that he has no impact on. You know, this is all about ticket offices now across the country that they're going to be closing down. He's in charge of the Metro Link in Greater Manchester. The Metro Link has no ticket offices. So if you want to talk about ticket offices for trains, why not talk about ticket offices for trams that he's in charge of? He doesn't. He's just always talking about transport so he can get in the news. And why does he care about that? That's because he's feathering his nest ready for a jump to Parliament. He's just like Boris Johnson. Yeah. He's using the mayoralship he's got in Greater Manchester. He's using that as a stepping stone to get back into Westminster and say, look at all the experience I've got.
From his point of view, hopefully this time at a more senior role than his minor ministerial role from last time.
Yeah, yeah. And again, if you look at the front bench, that Labour can put together if they win next election, Andy Burnham would be top notch on that. But even I disagree with policies. He's not one of the lunatics. You know, he's a serious politician with serious ideas that I tend to disagree with. But he's not a lunatic. He would sit nicely on that bench as Keir Starmer's at the dispatch box giving a speech, and he's looking at Keir Starmer's back going, that's a nice place to put a knife. Because that's what he wants. He wants 10 Downing Street. He always has done. Yeah, so he's using it as a stepping stone. Okay, the next link. It's not just that he's not concentrating on crime. It's the fact he's been in charge 6 years, and under his watch, Greater Manchester Police were put into special measures. Greater Manchester Police were the second police force ever to be placed into special measures. They're out of it now. But under his watch, the police threw away 130,000 crimes, came into the system, no one looked at him, and they all went in the bin. And then they reported how great they're doing dealing with crimes. And look at our stats. Well, 130,000 went in the bin. Senior police officers failing their duty, the grooming gang scandal under his watch, the fact, his report won't go into all the information and speak to victims, his failed crime in Greater Manchester. And that's over the 6 years he's been in charge. That's what people should be voting for. And then when the police went into special measures, he made the chief constable resign. He didn't sack him. He didn't say to him, this is under your watch. You're in charge of the police. We're sacking you. No. Take your time. Take a couple of weeks off, couple of months off sick. Come back.
Receive the payout.
Payouts, golden handshake. No disrespect for you. Just resign. And he resigned. Andy Burnham should have resigned for failing the police. That's what he should have done. And let's all go back to the beginning. That's what the police crime commissioners were meant to do. They were meant to be a publicly known figure that the people could hold accountable in their area if they didn't like the increase in crime or what the police were dealing with. I've knocked on 10,000 doors in Greater Manchester when I worked for the council, asking them priorities for the police. No one ever said bank robbers. No one ever said, international terrorists. People used to say to me on the streets, litter, kids causing antisocial behaviour, and dog poo. They were the three things that 99% of houses would tell me when I'd knock on their door. Now, that's what people care about. Low-level antisocial behaviour that affects your life every single day. Now, I'm not saying we give murderers and rapists and terrorists a free pass. We need to be looking at that as well. But we need to be looking at the bread and butter and making people feel safer because they are safer walking down the streets and have a better quality of life. So next time there's an election in your area for the PCC, make sure you vote and make sure you're voting for the right. And make sure you vote for someone who's going to tackle crime and not use it as a stepping stone.
Yeah, somebody who takes the job seriously because they really want to deliver for them.
Exactly. That's what it was there for. Any questions?
Where are you standing again?
2nd of May next year is the mayor election in Greater Manchester. And as I've just said, also includes the police crime commissioner role.
And do you have any socials to promote?
Everywhere. If you check out Nick Buckley, MBE, it's the same username. I'm on everything. So check it out. And if you want to come and see me, I'm actually doing a question and answer session in Wigan. If you go to my social media, you'll find the links and find out dates. It's going to be Monday, the 30th of October, 7 p.m. in a social club in Wigan. It'll be my first Q&A.
Perfect. Sounds good.